So hey, real quick before we jump into our anxiety this morning, I just want to share something with you. If you're new to Aldersgate, you may not have heard that we have a vision to be a multiplying church. We call this our 5 by 35 vision. We've been casting that for a couple of years now, so that by the time Aldersgate is 35 years old, which is in the year 2020, we will be a part of 5 different campuses or church plants. Currently, we have 3. We're here at 103rd and Indiana in Lubbock. We have a campus out in Abernathy, Texas. We began to partner with them a couple of years ago. Last Easter, we did a kind of a launch on Easter Sunday. I just want to share with you this morning that last Sunday, they had, on a non-Easter, non-Christmas Sunday, they had in attendance double their average attendance all of last year. And they had, when we started out there, they had 3 kids in their kid ministry. Last Sunday, they had over 20 kids in their kids' ministry. So great things happening out there. What I really want to share with you, though, is we also, our 3rd campus right now, or one of our 3 campuses, is at the Lubbock County Detention Center at the Lubbock County Jail. We have Cluster 6 out there, and so we have a worship service out there every Sunday, actually 2 worship services, 100 men or so out there every Sunday afternoon, and then we go in and disciple during the week, not only in Cluster 6 where the Impact Campus is, but in the women's side of the Lubbock County Detention Center as well. This past Thursday evening, the Lubbock County Detention Center hosted their annual volunteer appreciation dinner. And our campus pastor out there, Larry Gunsett, and Rex Henderson, who also volunteers out at the Impact Campus, were recognized as Volunteers of the Year at the Lubbock County Detention Center. So is Larry's right there at the back. And you need to understand, when we say volunteer, it's completely volunteer. Larry and Rex or any other of our volunteers out there get paid anything, and they do it without wanting to be paid for anything. And the Lubbock County Detention Center, by the way, has over 200 volunteers. So it's a great honor for them, and I just wanted to recognize this morning and Larry tell you thank you for everything that you do out there. You're making an incredible difference. So, all right, now back into our anxiety. Whew, okay, where we're comfortable, all right? We're in this message series called Anxious for Nothing. This is our 3rd message in a 4-week series. The verse that we're anchored on during the entire series is Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 through 7. If you got a Bible, you can turn there. If you got your phone, Philippians 4, 6 through 7. Hopefully you have it memorized by now. And then we're going to go back to Mark chapter 4 this morning. So if you got your Bible in your lap or your phone, be ready to go back to Mark chapter 4. Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 through 7. Do not be anxious about anything. No amens at this point, 3 weeks into the series. But in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Let me tell you where we've been. Do not be anxious about anything. Did you know that that's possible? Jesus did not come to tell you right from wrong. He came to set you free. And if you are in a prison or if you are held captive by over worrying or over anxiety or staying up at night because your mind is racing, God wants to set you free. Listen, the premise of Max Lucado's book, which by the way is kind of an anchor for this sermon series, Anxious for Nothing, is this. The presence of anxiety is unavoidable, but the prison of anxiety is optional. If we choose to stay there, it's our choice because God came to set us free. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Last week, we talked about the fact that we can't just think differently, we have to live differently. We can't just think that we can be free from anxiety, but we have to live as though we are free from anxiety. 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7 says, cast all your anxieties on him. That word cast means to let God know your anxieties, like Paul says in Philippians 4. The word cast not only means throw them onto Jesus, but leave them there. We encourage you to come up with something at home like a worry jar, or what we did here last Sunday is we had worry cans. and we took these pieces of paper and we wrote the things that you were anxious about down on the pieces of paper, and we literally threw them into the can. We cast them into the can, and we left them there. I just want you to see all the anxieties that you threw out last Sunday. And I'm hoping that you left them here. Because that's what it means to cast your anxieties on Him. This morning, we're going to go a step further when Paul says, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving. Circle that, underline that, highlight that. With thanksgiving. Tell God where you're worried. Tell God where you're anxious. The take home today is this: worry refuses to share a heart with gratitude. Worry refuses to share a heart filled with gratitude. With thanksgiving, let God know your request. Okay, so this is where we're going to go to Mark chapter 4. Mark chapter 4, I'm going to start reading a story out of verse 35. It goes like this. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, let us go across to the other side. And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose. Now you need to imagine this, because I know you can't do that here in Lubbock, all right? And the waves were breaking into the boat so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said to him, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? Now, sometimes we superhumanize the disciples, but they were human just like you and I. And so for a minute this morning, I want you to think about where they may have been anxious during this point of their life with Jesus. Before the storm even came up, I want you to think about where they might have been anxious in the story. You may have to dig a little deeper, thinking about it a little bit deeper, but they were probably anxious just knowing that Jesus wanted them to go to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. See, because you need to understand that the other side of the Sea of Galilee was people they didn't like. They didn't want to hang out with. They didn't want to have anything to do with. It was like enemy territory. It would be like us having to go to Austin. Or God forbid, having to leave the state of Texas, right? It was pagan territory. The disciples had been Jewish all their life, and what Jews knew was that you didn't have anything to do with pigs. Over on the other side, it was all about pigs. They were everywhere. Don't you think that they may have been a little anxious about going to a place where the people that they didn't like were? And having to be around animals that they had been told all their life that you don't be around those animals. And on top of that, they had seen and heard that on the other side there were these demons, legions of demons that took up residence in people. Would you have been anxious? And on top of that, on the way to the other side, in the boat in the Sea of Galilee, this huge storm comes up. The Sea of Galilee is really kind of a small body of water, and it's kind of in a bowl or a basin between some mountains. And so it's real common for winds to come over the mountains and hit the sea, and to do it very unexpectedly and to cause these huge storms. I'm not a huge water person. I'm not a huge boat person. I can only imagine how anxious I would have been that this storm was raging and that water was coming inside the boat. I'm not a huge boat person, but I know that the water is supposed to stay outside the boat. Simon, James, and John were even fishermen. They had been out on this sea many times. They had encountered many storms out on the sea. So for them to think this was something, it must have really been something. I just want you to put yourself in the place of their anxiety because you understand what it's like. And then on top of that, when they needed rescuing from their anxiety the most, the one they knew could rescue them was asleep. Wiersbe tells us that God allows two kinds of storms in life: correcting storms and perfecting storms. Correcting storms are those storms of life that we kind of bring on ourselves, the principle of you reap what you sow. And oftentimes in our lives, we find that our worry and anxiety is coming from something that we caused. It's the consequences of something that we planted. And now we're dealing with the worry and anxiety, and God allows this correcting storm to come into our lives to grow us, to transform us, to shape us. It can be over a lot of different things. It can be over finances. We ask you, what are you most worried or anxious about? Overwhelmingly, the number one answer was finances. I would venture to say, at least in my own experience with my own personal life, the majority of the time I have anxiety over my finances, it's because of something I did or didn't do. And it's this correcting storm, and then I shouldn't have spent that, or I need to downsize here, or I need to do something different here. Same thing with marriage and parenting. That was the next number 2 and 3 of what you're most anxious about. We begin to have problems in our marriage. Okay, if I had cherished more, if I had respected more, if I had made time to date more and just not take things for granted. Or with parenting, oh my goodness, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes parenting is number 1 on my list, even above finances, right? Our oldest one, he's about to be 20 years old. This week he's gonna be 20 years old. He stopped by our house this week because he normally stops by either A, when he needs clothes washed, or B, when it's dinner time. So this week he stopped by with clothes at dinner time. And we were having a conversation. And in the conversation, it was me and Blake and Amy. We were sitting there, and it was actually about Jeb, our other son, and I said something about how much anxiety I was having over this issue. We've been talking about anxiety at our house a lot the last 3 weeks. I don't know if y'all have or not. And Blake said to us, hey, in my psychology class, we're talking about this. Do you know that we actually even took a test? He went on to tell us about this test that he took in his psychology class. And on a scale of 0 to 100, it would give you a number on where your anxiety level was. 0 being no anxiety and 100 being severe anxiety. I said, Blake, where did you test? He said, I was a 12. You just got to know Blake to understand that he really does live at a 12. And the teacher was even caught off guard that he scored a 12. Blake, really? Do you think you're really at a 12? Yes, I'm really at a 12. I'll give you an example. I didn't do my homework for today, and I'm not worried about it at all. And that's honest truth. That's how he lives his life. And sometimes when I hear stories just like his anxiety is here. When I hear that story, my anxiety goes out the roof. What did I do wrong, right? And I realize that most of the time, it is my wrong. It is my fault. Those are correcting storms. The other kind of storms that come into our life are perfecting storms. These are the hardest for us to deal with. Look, correcting storms, at the end of the day, even though we don't like them, we realize we got ourselves into this mess. Perfecting storms are hard. It's the storms where we're on the other end of the line with the medical professional tell us news that we didn't want to hear. Or we have sudden and unexpected loss in our life that happened way too soon. We can go on and on and on about these perfecting storms. Not that God causes those storms, but he uses those storms in our life to teach us lessons, to grow us, to shape us, to transform us. Those are the storms where our faith gets tested at the deepest level. Certainly, I would probably argue that this storm for the disciples was a perfecting storm. That Jesus was teaching them something in this storm. They didn't cause the storm to come. Jesus perhaps didn't even cause the storm to come, but took it as an advantage a moment to teach and grow and transform. So whether you're stuck in anxiety because of a place where God is correcting you, or you're stuck in anxiety because of a place where God wants to perfect you, the bottom line is we're stuck. And Paul would say in Philippians 4, 6 through 7, the way we get unstuck from that is to ask him and to do it with thanksgiving, with a heart of gratitude. Now let me ask you this morning, you're in the boat with the disciples, you're as anxious as they are. In the middle of that moment, what do you have to be thankful for? Anything? Because you're probably thinking, well, they hadn't sunk yet. I guess they could be thankful for that. Right? How often do you get into the middle of an anxiety storm and think there is absolutely nothing to be thankful for? I have nothing to be gracious or grateful about. But I would put forth this morning that even in the middle of the worst storm the disciples had ever been in, there was something to be thankful for. Two things to be specific. Number one is this. I would say that they should be thankful that Jesus was near. Now, he was asleep, and they had to go and wake him up. And they even asked him, do you not care that we're perishing? Did they forget that he was on the boat with them? Perishing right along with them. Although they had seen enough of his power to this point, they knew he could do something about it. Listen to me, come on. How often do you get trapped in your worry and your anxiety and feel like Jesus isn't there? How many times do you stay awake at night with your mind racing and feel like God is nowhere even close? How many times do you pray all of this stuff over and over and over and feel like your prayers just hit the ceiling and bounce back? I want to share something with you this morning. Even in those times and in those places, Jesus is there. Jesus is near. Listen to this. In fact, you want to write this down and you want to memorize this. You want to quote this when the worry and anxiety sneaks up on you. Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. Let me translate that for you. When you pass through the storm, I will be with you. When you're stuck in your anxiety, I am with you. When you can't sleep at night because your mind is racing, I am with you. Listen, Jesus never promised that we would go through life without storms. He did promise that he would be with us in every single one of them. Jesus is near. And on those days that you don't think you have anything to be grateful about, you write at the top of your list, Jesus is here. In fact, I want you to take the piece of paper that's in your seat this morning. If you've already written on it, steal one from your neighbor. But I want you to take this piece of paper, and on this piece of paper this morning, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna write down the things that we are thankful for. Last week, we encouraged you to get a worry jar. This week, we're gonna encourage you to get a Thanksgiving journal. And you just keep a journal of all the things that you are thankful for. This can be the beginning of it for you this morning. And what I want you to do at the very beginning is write, Jesus is here. And then I want you to leave a little space for something else I'm going to tell you in a minute, and then you can use the whole rest of the paper in the backside to just begin to write down things you're thankful for. Because the second thing I'm going to share with you is this. Not only is Jesus near, Jesus is the one who brings peace. Just think about that for a second. I'm just going to free a lot of you right here in this one sentence. You can't bring yourself peace. Only Jesus can bring you peace. Look what happens. Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing? Read with a little bit more excitement than that. And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, peace, be still. And the disciples, look, who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him. Do you not believe that if Jesus can stand up in the middle of a boat that is filling with water because of one of the roughest storms ever on the Sea of Galilee, can make the storm be still, can he not bring peace in your storm? Can he not bring peace in your anxiety? Can he not bring peace in your worry? John chapter 14, verse 27 says it this way: peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. This is Jesus speaking to you. Peace I give to you, my peace I leave with you. You may be facing a great storm of anxiety, but Jesus has even greater peace for you. So on your sheet of paper, right under Jesus is here, I want you to write down, Jesus brings me peace. And no matter what storm you find yourself in, no matter how overwhelming your anxiety is, no matter how strong your worry is, no matter how many sleepless nights you've had, you have two things to be thankful for. Jesus is there, and he brings you peace. Now, I know that there's a whole lot more that you can be thankful for, that you can express gratitude. And I encourage you, just get pieces of paper, a journal, keep it on your iPad, your phone, whatever. But just keep a running list of the things that you have to be thankful for. And when anxiety comes knocking, you give it right back to Jesus with all the things you have to be thankful for. With prayer and supplication, let your request be made known to God with thanksgiving. Lucado probably says it best in his book. It's on page 93. I'm going to read it because I can't. Lucado's just the master author. He says it so much better than I could repeat it. He says, the widest river in the world is not the Mississippi, Amazon, or the Nile. The widest river on earth is a body of water called If Only. Throngs of people stand on its banks and cast longing eyes over the waters. They desire to cross but can't seem to find the ferry. They are convinced their if only river separates them from the good life. If only I were thinner, I'd have the good life. If only I were richer, I'd have the good life. If only the kids would come, if only the kids were gone. If only I could leave home, move home, get married, get divorced. If only my skin were clear of pimples, my calendar free of people, my profession immune to layoffs, then I would have the good life. The if only river. Are you standing on its shore? Does it seem the good life is always one if only away? One purchase away, one promotion away, one election, transition, or romance away? If so, then we've traced your anxiety back to one of its sources. You're in a hurry to cross the river and worried that you never will. Consequently, you work long hours, borrow more money, take on new projects, and pile on more responsibilities. Stress, debt, short nights, long days, all part of the cost of the ticket to the land of the good life. And then at the end of the chapter, he shares this. No more if only. It is the petri dish in which anxiety thrives. Replace your if only with already. Look what you already have and treat each anxious thought with a grateful one and prepare yourself for a new day of joy. This is your already list. Focus on what Jesus has already done, what he's already given you, where he's already freed you, where he's already delivered you. Focus on your already list, not your if only list. Focus more on what you do have and less on what you don't. I want to share a story with you, a story about a gentleman named Horatio Spafford. Just add that to your already list, that your parents did not name you Horatio Spafford. He was an incredibly successful businessman, lawyer, He was an elder in the Presbyterian Church in Chicago in the late 1800s. In the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, Horatio and his wife Anna suffered great loss. In November of 1873, Anna and their 4 daughters joined up with some friends and set sail from America to Europe. On December 2nd, just a few short days later, Horatio received a telegram from his wife Anna that simply said, "Saved alone, what shall I do?" Horatio then learned that the ship that his wife and 4 daughters were sailing on collided with another vessel and sunk, drowning all 4 of his daughters. He got on a boat to go to England to pick up his wife, Anna. And on that boat, he recorded the lyrics to a song that has become one of the most well-known hymns, still sung today. The first verse reads this way: "When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul." You see, I want us to understand this morning that when Paul said with thanksgiving, when we focus on an already list and not an if only list, it doesn't matter what storm comes against us, we can say to Jesus boldly, "It is well with my soul." Mainly because of the first 2 things that are on your list. Jesus is here, and he brings you peace. So we're going to sing a song like we always do. You can stand, you can sit, you can go to the prayer corner, you can come to the front, but mainly we want you to focus on your already list. And when you leave here today, you take your anxiety and you fight it with your already list. You answer it with your already list. And you give Jesus your anxiety with great gratitude. And if we can learn the art of this, it will be well with our souls.